So it seems that there are some things I may need to clarify about that last video and everything surrounding it. Long story short, I posted a tweet in response to the new redesigns that have been made for the upcoming Persona 5 mobile game for the Chinese market, where some of the classic demon designs have been edited to suit China's censorship standards. I saw these designs and I tweeted that it reminded me of the same thing being done for a Dead or Alive mobile game, where they basically, for the most part, just added bits of black fabric over exposed skin, right? And I said that I preferred the designs this way. Somehow this led to this massive shit show across Twitter and eventually YouTube, where a lot of people took umbrage with the fact that I liked these redesigns. They somehow got the impression that I was pro-censorship because I like a design that happens to have been born out of censorship. When the reality is that I like the designs from an aesthetic standpoint completely divorced from the context in which they were created. That's it. I never said anything about the censorship. I just said I think the designs look better this way. I didn't think that innocuous comment would be taken so poorly by so many people, to where I made a video in response to that. That video, I titled it something to the effect of, I like these new redesigns and I'm glad you're upset by it. It seems that some people thought that when I said it, I was talking about the censorship itself, the redesigns, that I was criticizing people who preferred the old designs or have an issue with censorship. I was not. I never said anything negative about those people. I've never had a problem with those people, because if you prefer the old designs or have an issue with the new designs existing at all or what have you, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's just a difference of opinion. I can accept it. I don't have an issue with people feeling differently, and I can just move on, and that's it. And I like to think other people could do the same when they saw my tweet. But then people started to misrepresent me and accused me of being pro-censorship or some kind of Chinese Communist Party dick rider. Some people even said that, actually, when all I did was say I liked a design that happens to have been redesigned to meet standards for release on the Chinese market. Because this game would simply not exist, period, if it didn't meet those standards. Because it's made for the Chinese market specifically, right? This game wouldn't have been made for the Japanese market. It was made specifically for the Chinese. So if it didn't meet the standards the Chinese government has set for this stuff, then it just couldn't get released. This is a thing that I feel like a lot of people don't quite understand, is it couldn't get released in China without making these changes. And some people may say, well, just don't make it at all. I disagree with that, but I think that's a perfectly valid stance to take. But there were people who were comparing it to the SJWs. I'm just thinking, do you honestly think that the Chinese Communist Party is run by social justice warriors? Is that what you think is going on? Even more someone who made that direct comparison to SJW, saying that I had gone SJW because I had previously criticised NetherRealm stuff, and then I was apparently defending MK11's redesigns of the female characters. When anyone who's seen my MK content knows for a fact that's not true. I criticised NetherRealm for that back then and in the critique as well. You know, just because I weren't calling them all SJW soy boy cucks doesn't mean I was offending them. I dislike those redesigns. It's just my reasons for doing so aren't because they covered up the skin of the ladies, which seems to be where a lot of the people take issue with, to the point where people are saying that I'm afraid of female skin or have an issue with women having their bodies showing off like guys. Power Girl. Chun-Li's alternate costume from Street Fighter 4. Tons of exposed skin. Full legs, pretty much. The boob window on Power Girl. A lot of cleavage on Chun-Li. If I had issues with that, I wouldn't have these figures. What it was that I happened to find, for the most part, exposed skin in a character design kind of bland. You know, I'd say this even about like the male designs, where a lot of fighting game male characters tend to go around shirtless, and it's a bit bland. I'd rather they have something more unique about their design, something that stands out, something that is indicative of their character, you know? But I don't have an issue with the skin being shown. I don't really get some of these arguments. Some of them I feel were, even if I may disagree with the way they were said, which I can't necessarily complain too much about because, you know, obviously the video's title and the tweets surrounding it were combative, one might say. So I'm not really in a position to criticise someone for that. But there were people who had more worthwhile arguments. Someone helped me to figure out that it may have been the issue. That I wasn't super clear on that. You know, you want your title to be representative of what you're trying to convey. Sometimes you're feeling spiteful and you just want to piss off the people who are just being dicks to you for no reason. But you also want to not be too long with it. You don't don't want it to turn into a light novel title. You try and make some things be a bit more brief, and so you might lose a bit of the clarity there. I didn't think it was an issue when I released it, that saying it. I figured it was clear enough that one sentence leads into the next. I like these redesigns, and I'm glad you're pissed off by it. I thought it was quite clear that it meant me liking the designs. But maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe some people came away from that thinking that I was saying, I'm glad you're pissed off by the redesigns or the censorship, and that wasn't the intent. I suppose then that if that was the takeaway you came away from it with, then I guess I am partly to blame for that. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody who simply has the different opinion to me. That was never the intention. It was purely the people who got combative over a difference of opinion on this redesign, this innocuous redesign that, let's be honest, probably won't even make it into the Western version if we get it. I mean, the Dead or Alive game even had, for some of the designs at least, alternate artwork that didn't have these tweaks. There was a version of the Kasumi render without those changes. I think the Momiji had one too. But I'm highly doubtful that the mobile game for Persona, if it does come to Japan and the West, that we'll have those redesigns as the only option. Whether they add in a toggle between the two versions or just give us the original designs. I mean, all that really changes is, in our version, there'll be different textures for some of the models. Like Succubus, it really is just a retexture. That's all it is. So it's just a different texture applied. They can just put a uncensored version on for the Western and Japanese version, everything outside of China, and it's fine. That wouldn't be an issue. So I feel like it is somewhat being blown out of proportion generally, this whole thing, because we're probably going to get an uncensored version if we do indeed get it. It's just that in order for the game to exist in China at all, it had to meet those guidelines. And I'm not supporting those guidelines. I'm not trying to justify those guidelines. I'm just explaining that's the reason why these changes were made. Because the game could not get released in China otherwise, and it was made for the Chinese market. That's the primary demographic they want to sell this to, because the Chinese mobile market is quite big, in case you're not aware. I think a lot of people are letting their emotions run wild. I'm not criticising people for that. I mean, I have had my first share of that. I mean, the title was clearly a result of me being pissed off at those people who were fucking with me, right? But it needs to be understood why these designs exist, and also the fact that we're probably not going to have those as the only option, especially with how much backlash there has been. I'm sure Atlas Japan and Atlas US and whatever are going to look at that and go, we should probably have an uncensored version when we bring this thing over, just to avoid another shitstorm like this when that happens. But there really were a lot of people who have looked at this, and whether because they misinterpreted the title or because someone else did, and then the only exposure to the video they got was someone else criticising me for their interpretation of it, or because someone's just fucking lying about me, because that has been happening. Like that guy who said that I was defending NetherRealm's redesigns for MK11. Again, absolute nonsense. People saying that I was supporting Chinese censorship. No, I never supported that. I don't support that. I just think that these redesigns, on an aesthetic level, are, to my tastes, superior. They appeal more to me. One person also brought that up, was that because I just said my opinion and didn't specify it was an opinion, that I was pushing my opinion as objective truth, and I wish we were past this. I wish we were past the point where a person has to specify, it's just my opinion, your opinion is valid. Why are we still at the point where people need that validation from a stranger online? I say, I like this more than this other thing. That person disagrees. And so they feel personally offended that I don't have the same opinion as them, or because I didn't specify, it's just my opinion, as if they need their opinion validated by saying that mine isn't worth more than theirs. That's one of the things where I draw the line here. There are things that people have said that I can be understanding and say, maybe I could have handled things a little better in the lead up to this. But stuff like that, I'm like, no, dude, piss off. I'm not going to get into a point where every time I state an opinion, I specify it's just my opinion. That's the kind of person I was talking about. That person gets upset over nothing, just a difference of opinion, then I'm glad they're upset, because they don't deserve to be happy because they are so petty and childish about other people's opinions. That's what the title of the video is talking about, and I have renamed the video a bit to try and reflect that. It's not like a massive change, it's just what I think is a bit clearer. But it's not going to make a difference, of course. I mean, I've seen plenty of people on Twitter who have just said outright untruths about me, saying that I've defended these practices in the past when I never have. It's just bullshit. You know, I've asked these people for evidence or tried telling them that's not true. It just doesn't change anything. These people have made their decisions about me, and so they're just going to keep pushing this narrative. So there have been people who have QRT'd my tweet and my video, just calling me heinous shit, Chinese bootlicker or whatever, and gotten like dozens of retweets, hundreds of likes. And no matter how much I may try and set the record straight, it's not going to change anything, I don't think. These people have made up their mind, and they will not be dissuaded. You know, hopefully some people will see this. I'm sure most of the people won't. They'll just say, why should I listen to what this person has to say? And they're just going to keep talking shit without even giving me a chance to explain and clarify what I meant. That I wasn't talking about them. I don't have a problem with them as long as they're being civil. And some people might say, well, you're not being civil. I'm not being civil with the people who are not being civil with me. If you just disagree with my opinions, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a reason to go after you. I might occasionally reply to some people, say I disagree with this thing, but I don't attack people for feeling differently about me. It's when they have poorly reasoned arguments or when they get combative about me, that's when I get combative about them. And again, I don't expect those people to actually watch this. I don't really have any hope that things are going to change. I mean, my subscribers have even been going down a bit. I've seen it's gone down at least a couple hundred since this whole thing started. I'm sure it's going to go down further and go into like actual full-on decline because I had the goal to subjectively like a redesign better just because it happens to have been born out of censorship, as if nothing good can ever come from a bad place, as if just because the design was the result of censorship, the design objectively cannot be a good design. Even though I saw people in the replies to those other people saying that some of those designs actually are good, but they're born out of censorship so can't support it, and that apparently makes it okay because they explicitly stated they don't support censorship. And I think that's just absurd. All I can really hope for, I guess, is that some people will see this and say, okay, that makes sense. And then when they see other people actively slandering me, this is actual slander, that they will say, hey, that's not actually what's going on. He explains it in this video. Not very hopeful about it, though. Because why should I ever expect civility in online discourse? Why should I expect people to say, hey, I disagree with that, and move on? And again, to reiterate, all it was that started this whole thing was that I liked a redesign of a fucking succubus. To some people, that's just blasphemy, because if she's not showing off skin, the design makes no sense. As if showing off skin is literally the only way a woman can be sexual. I suppose in summary, if someone has an opinion that you disagree with, their opinion is not worth less than yours just because it's your opinion. An opinion has no value based on the person who holds it. Your opinion is not worth more than theirs, and they're not saying theirs is worth more than yours just because they are stating what their opinion is, or because they don't specify it's just an opinion. We all need to accept that people can just have different opinions, and that's fine. Their opinions are not worth more or less than ours. They don't necessarily think theirs are worth more or less than ours just because they don't specify, oh, but that's just my opinion. Yours is also valid, guy. You don't need, or you shouldn't, at least. You shouldn't need to have someone you don't even know reassure you that your opinion is valid. We should be better than this. We should be able to talk about these opinions just civilly without having to lie and slander people. And if we think someone is being a dick, maybe consider that it might just be poor wording on their part. Maybe they didn't word it the way that they perhaps intended to. Maybe it just came across wrong. And we should try and understand what exactly the person was trying to say. You know, just because someone supports something born out of censorship doesn't mean they support censorship itself. I don't support censorship. I just think that these redesigns for these extra bits of black, they add a nice aesthetic touch to the designs. And I prefer that version of the design. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it ever was. But some people will just never listen. They'll never give me a chance. They've made up their minds. They've decided that I'm some kind of shill for the Chinese government and that I'm not to be listened to. That my view is invalid because it's different from theirs. And YouTube and Twitter really are the worst, aren't they?